Computers and the internet have changed the world. No longer are the most dangerous people in the world the builders of bombs and wielders of guns. The crimes happening in the digital space are next level, and you won't believe what some of these masters of code are capable of. These are the 20 most dangerous hackers in the world. Number 20. Kevin Mitnick. Kevin Mitnick is now an American technology security consultant, but he started out as a very naughty, but that also means very successful, hacker. Back in the mid-1990s, Mitnick became known as the world's most wanted hacker. He began his criminal hacking career when he first gained unauthorized access to a computer network all the way back in 1979 when he was just 16 years old. He broke into the Digital Equipment Corporation's, or DEC's, network using just the phone number for their system. Once inside, he then copied their software, and this was the first crime for which he was tried and convicted. But that was all the way back in 1988. He received a 12-month sentence with 3 years supervised release. He then broke into Pacific Bell's voicemail computers. A warrant was issued for his arrest, and then he went on the run for 2.5 years. The pursuit of Mitnick was well publicized all throughout the mid-1990s. He was finally apprehended and then given a whole bunch more charges that were related to hacking and wire fraud. He served 5 years in prison but was still feared by law enforcement, who then went so far as to say that Mitnick had the power to begin a nuclear war by whistling into a payphone. He was released in the year 2000, and then in 2001, a judge deemed him to be sufficiently rehabilitated to possess an amateur radio license. Since then, he's become known for his books, public speaking, and consultancy work, and he's now employed to do security consulting and to perform so-called penetration testing services. Basically, he's paid to hack their systems by the very same government and businesses who so feared his powers in the past. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. Now it's time for the sweet topic. Are you ready for a shock? The cool-looking guy on the left and the nerdy-looking guy on the right are actually the same person. He's one of the world's most dangerous hackers. A resident of Russia, he had no direction in life until discovering coding in his late teens. After a string of low-paying jobs, he then finally snapped, and like many criminals, money became a motivator. Like all of us, he just wanted more and more and saw an avenue to get it, taking what he knew about coding and turning to hacking. For years, he got away with it, using his skills to steal money from the private savings accounts of the mega-rich, but then he got too greedy and swiped too noticeable of a sum. His hacking days are over, and he now lives in a prison cell. As always, you can let me know what you think in the comments section down below using the hashtag #SweetTopic. Number 19. Anonymous Hacker Group. Making things even more tricky to track down, Anonymous is a group of hackers that are decentralized and international. They could basically be anywhere at any time and do almost anything. This so-called hacktivist collective have been responsible for multiple cyber attacks against different governments, as well as various institutions and agencies, some corporations, and even the Church of Scientology. They've all been victims that have been attacked by the Anonymous group. The group began back in 2003 in that place of all the very dregs of filthy things on the internet, being 4chan. If there was ever a forum that was responsible for more filth and toxicity, I would be pleasantly surprised. This is the location of the nastiest scum that feeds from the stuff that feeds from the microbes in the stinking juice at the bottom of a dumpster. So you know, it is a fairly unpleasant place. They formed this loose-knit group through an image board by using a bunch of buzzwords in the hacker community and then plotting to execute mayhem. For the most part though, they simply participate in anarchic activities that displease governments and evil corporations, so really, they can't be all that bad. Number 18. Adrian Lameau. Adrian Lameau was a hacker and American threat analyst who was dumped into the poisonous glare of the media's spotlight after he managed to break into many high-profile computer networks before being arrested in 2003. Amongst his early conquests were Yahoo, Microsoft, and the New York Times. He was what is usually termed a gray hat hacker, meaning that he would attack high-profile places and break laws or standards of ethics, but they generally do this without an overall malicious intent. Unlike some so-called black hat hackers, whose purpose is to cause harm through their efforts. Lameau was sentenced to 2 years probation with 6 months home detention and then fined $65,000 for compromising security at the major companies that he had hacked. Then, in 2010, he would hit the headlines again for his part in an enormous scandal that involved WikiLeaks. It would be Lameau that uncovered and reported the United States soldier Chelsea Manning for leaking hundreds of thousands of secret documents to WikiLeaks. This is what Adrian Lameau is best known for. He stated that he had only turned Manning in because there were lives in danger as a result of the leaks. Lameau was known as the homeless hacker, as he lived a fairly transient lifestyle. He was generally found squatting or sofa surfing rather than in a stable home. He was believed to have taken a wide variety of different drugs and supplements, which included Crater, which is known for its opioid and stimulant effects. It's not really considered to be safe or useful by the FDA and believed to have contributed to his early demise in 2018 at just the ripe age of 37 years old. Number 17. Albert Gonzalez. An American hacker, criminal, and police informant, Albert Gonzalez bought his very first computer when he was just 12 years old. Then, by the time that he had turned 14, he had hacked into NASA. He's been accused of being the mastermind behind a scam that involved credit card theft and the reselling of some 170 million cards and ATM numbers between the years of 2005 and 2007. It is the biggest of any fraud of its kind in the history of the entire world. As well as that especially large crime, Gonzalez has also been involved in a whole bunch of other hacks into corporate computer systems in which he stole masses of data. He's known to have enjoyed spending the spoils of his activities by throwing himself lavish parties and staying in swanky hotels. He would be sentenced to 20 years in federal prison in 2010 for his part in the hacking of various companies, which included TJ Maxx, Dave & Buster's, and Barnes & Noble. He asked for leniency on the grounds that he has Asperger's syndrome and is scheduled for release in August of 2023. Number 16. Matthew Bevan and Richard Price. In 1996, the British-born hacker Matthew Bevan, who went under the handle of Coogee, would be arrested for hacking into secure United States government networks. As a teenager, Bevan had begun his hacking career when he first began to really be good at breaking into computer networks. He was quite happy to break into pretty much any system to begin with, but after a while, he became only interested in the networks that were run by United States military institutions. For him, it provided a challenge that was too tantalizing to ignore. When he was arrested in 1996, he was believed to have successfully hacked sensitive establishments within the United States Air Force, NASA, and NATO. He had a hacking partner at the time by the name of Richard Price, who had hacked a research facility in Korea and then dumped the entire contents on the United States Air Force system. People were scared that he had hacked North Korea and that they would see it as being espionage, but fortunately he had also hacked a South Korea facility, so a major international crisis was averted. In the end, it was deemed by the Crown Court that there was no public interest in the pursuit of the case, and that was simply that. Number 15. Jensen James Anchetta. Back in 2006, Jensen James Anchetta was to become the very first person to be charged with the crime of controlling large numbers of hijacked computers, which are known as botnets. It's believed that during his hacking career, he had hijacked as many as 500,000 computer systems and was able to control so many computers and networks through this technique that he could orchestrate large-scale attacks. Then, in 2005, as part of an elaborate and hilariously named sting operation, Operation Bot Roast, Anchetta was lured to the local FBI office and then captured. He went on to plead guilty on 4 counts of felony charges of violating fraud and computer-related activity laws. He would be sentenced to 57 months in prison and had to forfeit a vehicle and his profits that were made from his nefarious schemes. He was also ordered to pay restitution to the United States government for infecting their computers. Number 14. Michael Kautz. Also known as Mafia Boy, Michael Kautz is a former computer hacker who turned into a security expert from Quebec, Canada. His exploits would begin in February of the year 2000 when he created a project that he named Revolta, which means rebellion in Italian. That's where he created a DDoS, or a distributed denial of service attack, which causes servers to be overloaded to the extent that they're no longer responsive to commands. He did this to Yahoo and essentially shut them down completely for nearly an hour. He then went on to do the same to eBay, Amazon, Dell, and CNN, all within the same week. He was finally tracked down by the FBI and eventually sentenced by the Montreal Youth Court to 8 months open custody and 1 year of probation, and his use of the internet was also restricted. Kautz's shenanigans basically helped to highlight the terrible lack of security in both commercial and government computer systems, and also made people realize that they needed to improve this security immediately before they were maliciously attacked on a massive scale. Kautz has since written a column about computer security and has written a book about his teenage hacking life. Number 13. Robert Tappan Morris. In 1988, the malware known as Morris Worm began its havoc-wreaking journey from a computer at Cornell University. It spread between all of the computers there that were connected to the internet and was undetectable by design. What uncovered it was that it created more copies of itself than its designer, Robert Tappan Morris, could control. This worm was not destructive, but rather was designed to slow the processing abilities of computers. It's not exactly clear what Morris intended to do with it, but what was significant about the whole affair was that Morris became the first individual to be tried under the newly created Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986. He has since been called a white hat hacker, which is the term that's used for a person in either the corporate or academic world that creates programs that demonstrate where the system's vulnerability lies, and that makes it public so that security measures can be put into place. Morris basically triggered the entire creation of the cybersecurity industry with his little worm. Number 12. Jonathan James. Jonathan James was a gray hat ethical hacker who was known for being the very first juvenile to be incarcerated in the United States for committing cybercrime. In 1999, James managed to hack into several systems, which included those of the Miami-Dade school system and Bell South Communications Company. He then went on to break into the network at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency in the United States Department of Defense, and funnily enough, this drew the attention of the authorities towards this then teenager. He later admitted that he had managed to install a backdoor in a computer at the DTRA, and he was then able to install a sniffer that allowed him to intercept thousands of messages, usernames, and passwords from official military computers. He was discovered, and then in January of 2000, his home was raided by government agencies, and he would be arrested. He would serve 6 months in a federal prison, even though he was only 16 years old. He ultimately died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound in 2008 after being accused of cybercrimes that he did not commit. Number 11. Astra. Although this hacker has never been publicly identified, there have been speculations and investigations into who Astra may have been. In 2008, a 58-year-old mathematician from Greece was apprehended for their alleged involvement in a hack on the Dassault Group. This is believed to have gone on for almost 5 years unnoticed, during which time the hacker, known as Astra, had been stealing weapons technology software and data and then selling that pilfered information to about 250 different individuals from all over the world. And apparently, this sustained hacking would cost Dassault about $360 million. It's not exactly clear why the true identity of Astra has never been resolved, but what do you think? Why has this remained such a secret? Let me know all of your ideas in the comments section down below. Number 10. Owen Thor Walker. Known online by the pseudonym Akill, Owen Thor Walker is a hacker from New Zealand who has not been convicted for any cyber crimes, despite the fact that he pled guilty on several counts. Diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, Walker was home educated from the age of 13, and despite the fact that he never received formal training in computer education, he then went on to teach himself computer programming and encryption. In 2008, he owned up to being the ringleader of an international hacking group that was believed to have been responsible for causing somewhere in the region of $26 million worth of damage. He was arrested after international investigations that involved the FBI would discover that he had been involved in an attack on the network at the University of Pennsylvania involving a botnet that Walker had created and servers that he used in Malaysia. He pled guilty but received only a fine rather than a conviction, as the judge overseeing the case decided that it would be detrimental to his future to pursue it any further. He was then hired by the New Zealand branch of the Australian telecommunications corporation Telstra to work in their security department as a consultant. Number 9. Vladimir Levine. In 1994, an individual known as Vladimir Levine from Russia hacked into the accounts of many large corporate customers at Citibank by using their dial-up wire transfer system, which was called the Financial Institutions Citibank Cash Manager, and was able to transfer the funds to different bank accounts that had been set up by various accomplices in other countries, which included the United States, Finland, Israel, and the Netherlands, along with Germany. When these accomplices attempted to withdraw the funds in Rotterdam, San Francisco, and Tel Aviv, they were then apprehended by the authorities. It would be then, while they were being interrogated, that they would give investigators the name of Levine. At this time, Levine had been working as a computer programmer at a company in St. Petersburg. Although the international investigation led them to the culprit, Russia actually doesn't allow for the extradition to foreign countries of its citizens. Number 8. Gary McKinnon. In 2002, Gary McKinnon would be accused of committing the biggest military computer hack of all time, and that is quite the statement. McKinnon hails from Scotland in the UK, and he claimed that although he had seemingly successfully pulled off one of the biggest and craziest hacks ever, he was only looking for evidence of UFOs. It's always aliens, I tell you, and something called free energy suppression, another crackpot conspiracy theory. But obviously, he needed to rummage about in the United States military and NASA's computers in order to be able to figure it out. Unfortunately, though, the United States government doesn't much like it if you hack into their secret computers, so McKinnon got into rather a lot of trouble. He would be accused of hacking into 97 different computers over the course of 13 months between the years of 2001 and 2002. The United States also said that he had deleted files from their operating systems and had shut down a branch of the military network in Washington for 24 hours. He also left a note that said, "Your security is crap," on the military's own website. His poking about in things was very thorough, but also very illegal. He was arrested and his computer was seized in August of 2002. Then, in November of that same year, he would be indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia by a federal grand jury on 7 counts of cybercrime, each one carrying a potential 10-year prison sentence. Then a couple of years would go by and nothing happened until all that extradition stuff kicked in and McKinnon appealed to the House of Lords to deny his extradition to the United States. There were many more reviews and appeals until eventually loads of famous people would get involved to say that McKinnon should be tried in the UK instead. They even released a single to promote awareness of McKinnon's campaign. Dave Gilmour from Pink Floyd, Bob Geldof, and Chrissie Hynde were all involved. On October 16th of 2012, the British Home Secretary blocked his extradition to the United States of America. That's right, you don't mess with Bob Geldof. Number 7. Syrian Electronic Army. The SEA group of hackers, or the Syrian Electronic Army, originally appeared online back in 2011 in support of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. They're most well known for using malware, phishing, website defacement, spamming, and denial of service style attacks, and they will generally target terrorist groups, political opponents, Western news organizations, human rights groups, and other websites that seem to be neutral in regards to the war in Syria. They've also successfully hacked into into the websites of some Middle Eastern governments, as well as others in Europe and some U.S. defense contractors. The SEA is seen as the first public internet army to be launched by an Arab country. Number 6. Lizard Squad. In 2014, the Lizard Squad were responsible for a stream of attacks against high-profile game servers. These attacks were the DDoS variety, that is, distributed denial of service, which flood the resources of a server, sometimes several servers at once, with a load of junk that overwhelms it and then causes it to fail to operate. In August of 2014, the servers for an online game called League of Legends were knocked offline by a Lizard Squad DDoS attack. Then, only a few days later, they took out the PlayStation Network in much the same way. In November, they would attack the Destiny game servers, and in December, Xbox Live would become their next target. It went on like this for weeks, and then in January of 2015, they claimed to have been responsible for a hack on Malaysia Airlines' website. All in all, the hacker group known as Lizard Squad has been accused of a lot of very naughty stuff, from tinkering with Taylor Swift's Instagram to being associated with crazy online conspiracy theories. However, they deny most of these more outlandish claims. Number 5. Guccifer. Marcel Lahel Lazar, also known online as Guccifer, is a hacker from Romania who targeted prominent people in the public eye, from celebrities to government officials in both the United States and Romania. The first documented appearance of Guccifer was when he claimed to have been behind the 2013 hack of George W. Bush's sister's AOL account. As a result, family photos of the former President Bush Sr. were put all over the internet, as well as a bunch of other personal images from the Bush family. Guccifer would then hack a bunch more accounts across AOL, Yahoo, Facebook, and Flickr, which gave him information about many government officials from previous and present administrations. Then in 2014, he would be imprisoned for 7 years in Romania for the crime of hacking the emails of Romanian government officials. He would then be extradited to the United States and indicted on federal charges, and in 2016 he was sentenced to 52 months in prison in the US. Romania would ask for him back in order to finish their own jail time before sending him back to America to serve theirs. Number 4. Stephen Wozniak. The co-founder of Apple Computer, along with his business partner Steve Jobs, Stephen Wozniak, or Woz, is known as a technology entrepreneur, computer programmer, inventor, and electronics engineer. However, he started out his computing career rather differently. He began tinkering with electronics from a young age, but it was when he invented his blue box in the early 1970s that he began to make a name for himself, and this was a phreaking device that was used to produce in-band signaling tones that used to be used within the long-distance telephone networks of the United States. It also meant that phreakers could sneakily place a long-distance phone call and then have it billed to another number or even dismissed completely. Different color boxes could hack into and control different parts of the phone network. This was what Woz was up to around the same time that he was also hacking into the University of Colorado Boulder's computer system. For this infraction, he would be expelled from college in his first year. After that, he then headed back to California and began all of that stuff that would lead to him and Jobs founding Apple together. And likely as not, you already know how well that went. Number 3. The Masters of Deception. The Masters of Deception, or MOD, was a group of hackers out of New York from the 1990s. They used a lot of techniques that would cause mayhem in the telephone company infrastructure and were later prosecuted for their crimes. Back in the good old days, hacking involved being able to do a bunch of clever stuff inside of telephone systems, since this is how computer systems were connected. MOD were experts in both hacking and phreaking, and there were loads of members, but the original ones were Mark Abin, who was known as Fiber Optic, Paul Stira, who was known as Scorpion, Elias Latopoulos, who went by Acid Freak, John Lee, who was known as Corrupt, and Julio Fernandez, otherwise known as Outlaw. They were like a hip-hop crew in the names department, but they were also busy poking about in computers and phone systems and getting chased by the FBI. This group openly shared information with each other, but they were closed off from those hackers outside of the group. They believed that the knowledge that they had to be earned and had various initiation levels in which which the potential new member might demonstrate their respect for the craft and their responsibility with this extremely powerful information. They didn't want to give out techniques that could be used for nefarious purposes to any old Tom, Dick, or Harry, you know. Then in 1992, 5 members of the group were indicted, and all 5 pled guilty and were either sentenced to probation or prison. Number 2. Evgeny Bogachev. The Russian computer hacker Evgeny Bogachev is wanted by the FBI for his involvement in a vast cyber racketeering kerfuffle. But as we already know, Russia does not allow its citizens to be extradited to foreign countries to be tried for their crimes. So Bogachev, who is known online as Lucky12345 and Slavic, is still living freely in the Russian Federation. He's alleged to have been an administrator in a hacking scheme that managed to install malicious software on over 1 million computers. This was the software that was known as Zeus, or sometimes Game Over Zeus, and it allowed the hackers behind the scheme to steal banking information and empty the compromised bank accounts. It's believed to have cost the United States over $100 million, and that gets you in a lot of trouble in America. So Bogachev has been put on that ultimate naughty list, the FBI's Cyber's Most Wanted. Number 1. Kevin Poulsen. As a former black hat hacker, Kevin Poulsen has been in a rather lot of trouble in his life. In 1990, he hacked the system of the telephone lines for a radio station in Los Angeles to guarantee that he would be their 102nd caller that day and win himself the prize on offer of a Porsche 944. After this, he found himself under investigation by the FBI for various hacking incidents, and at this time, he went underground, becoming a fugitive. He failed to pay rent on a storage unit in his name, and it was cleared out by the owners, and that's when they discovered computer equipment which the FBI gladly took off their hands. He was then featured on a television show called Unsolved Mysteries, and during that airing of the episode, all of the show's telephone lines crashed. It was an unsolved mystery in and of itself. Eventually, in April of 1991, he would be arrested, and in June of 1994, he pled guilty to 7 charges of conspiracy, wiretapping, and fraud, and for this, sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. He was also banned from using a computer or the internet after his release for a total of 3 additional years. This was actually the first time an American had ever been released from prison with a ban still in place on their use of technology after they had served their sentence. In 2004, his parole officer finally allowed him to use the internet, but there were still some restrictions on what he could do and access with it. After leaving prison, he began the process of becoming a journalist and attempted to put some distance between himself and his criminal activities of the past. He began writing articles on security and hacking news and became a freelance writer in 2005. He's now a contributing editor at the Daily Beast. That's all today from the dingy old basement of hacking and cybercrime. What do you think of all this naughty computing? And which of these stories was the most interesting to you? As always, let me know in the comments section down below. Check out the other cool things that are showing up on the screen, and I'll see you next time.